Chaz. That's back.
Oh, perfect.
Working.
So excited to be here. Look at this Monday, David Lee Scales.
Wild, dude.
It's a crazy change. Crazy pitch coming out of left field.
I don't like it.
Yeah.
I like ending the week with the grit.
It's true. I think about sometimes it is on Friday. It's traditionally been on Friday, I think, since the very beginning. Has it not been?
I think so, yeah.
When do you think most people listen to the show?
Saturday.
Really?
Yeah.
They mow the lawn, trim the hedge.
I get feedback on Saturday.
Okay.
Is how I know. And this week somebody, DM'd me Saturday morning and was like, dude, I'm driving to work. Where's the episode?
Ooh, driving to work on Saturday morning. Have you ever had to work a weekend job?
Oh, yeah. I worked restaurants throughout high school and college and all that.
So the weekend meant nothing to you. It was just another day on the calendar.
Exactly. It was, the day that I got made money, because I worked as a waiter for tips. So that was when I loaded up on cash. I only worked 3 days a week. I kept my expenses low, lifestyle high. So 3 days a week, and I'd clear 100 to 150 bucks, maybe 200 bucks on a good night. And so, $500 to $600 a week was enough for a college-aged David Scales. And then I'd go to Baja for a few days. Would you hit the ground on Monday just feeling like, ooh, I got money in my pocket? Yeah. I think I had a Tuesday shift. It was like Saturday, Sunday, or Friday, Saturday, and then Tuesday. So I had to stick around until Tuesday, and then Wednesday through the week.
You were good.
Yeah.
Which, did you work at a popular chain restaurant?
No.
No Olive Garden?
Small family-run restaurant.
Okay.
Yep.
No Chili's?
Nope.
Would you have liked to work at Chili's?
No, I think about that because you see some of the most vile behavior in that environment.
For sure.
Because the staff are not allowed to kind of have a personality or defend themselves. They just have to toe the company line.
You have to wear your pieces of flair, though, at Chili's. I think.
Exactly, yeah. And, so no personal expression, no nothing. So with a family-run restaurant, there was a much more, familial relationship with the consumer, the customer. They felt like they were part of the family and they wanted to be respectful and all that sort of stuff.
Were you encouraged to wear pieces of flair at your restaurant?
No.
No,
none of that.
Like, no, you don't have 12 pieces of flair. We need a button, David Lee, that expresses you.
You know what's hilarious about that is they're trying to get you to express your personality through their options.
Through limited.
Exactly.
Yeah. Stinking Office Space is such a fine film.
Is that Brannigan's? What was the name of that?
I think it was.
Is that it, though?
It's something like that.
It feels like that, but I don't think
vaguely,
that's it.
Generically Irish.
Yeah. Well, hey, in terms of dropping this episode, normally it's on Fridays. The audio version comes out Friday around noon or today, Monday around noon. And then the YouTube version.
The important new one. I embedded the YouTube version down below, but I watched it twice trying to find something new that I could tease. I thought we had something, but I just couldn't. My brain wasn't working very well, to be honest.
Well, it takes about a day to edit that and do all the uploads and rendering. So,
tough work.
But if you want to watch the YouTube version, it'll come out 24 hours after this.
YouTube version will be up on Tuesday and or Wednesday.
Correct. Yeah. So we need to give away a book.
Oh yeah.
We've got
how many subscribers did we get?
Let me look. We have 842 as of right now.
What were we at pre?
I think we're at 300.
So we gained a good 500. Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah. Let's see. Might have to edit some of this dead air. I'm gonna have to come back to it.
Yeah. We can end.
I'll come back to it at the end of the show.
Great.
All right. Well, at any rate, congrats on the book.
Thanh you.
Let me put it up for the camera.
That's
Reports from Hell.
I just got my physical hands on a physical copy. There it is.
The visuals were pretty spectacular of you signing books, just piles and piles and piles of books.
How the people want signature. I realized that when the first time I did it, I think, signed books, I was like, why does anybody want this? It just seemed like a real, I was happy to do it. But now I realize that in the day and age where books, like a physical thing, is not the norm, I think I love doing it, and it's a nice, I don't know, they're almost artifacts at this point, I feel.
I know. So I heard somebody being interviewed the other day, and he was saying despite my 2 New York Times bestsellers in the last 7 years, I would have made way more money if I would have, I think he was talking about consulting or something. And I thought to myself, wow, that's sad that that's true. And then secondly, can you justify that amount of time? You know, we all have limited amount of time, and you're devoting most of it towards putting this relic together. Is it worth it?
I mean, completely for me. It's the only thing I will be writing books until, you know, the very end. I will turn the lights off on publishing.
Because your calculus that you're running has nothing to do with money.
Kind of, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, mostly, I guess. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, that's probably precisely it. I mean, the people that I grew up just idolizing, right, were authors. I mean, not probably as a kid, but in college, I think, is when I discovered writing or reading for myself, kind of. And so I'm sure I've talked about it on the show before, but, you know, reading Albert Camus and reading, you know, Jacques Derrida and reading these guys, like I would look at their pictures and just think they are authors. What an incredible thing to be. And then kind of branching out from there to, you know, the more standards like your Hemingways and your Fitzgeralds, and going down various bobs and weaves to, you know, discover whoever, from Norman Mailer to just the discoveries I made about authors. The author was always, not only did I love what they wrote, I loved them. I loved, you know, stories of Norman Mailer stabbing his wife with a penknife, and obviously, you know, the way Hunter Thompson lived, and it all just seemed, you know, Joan Didion, and just the way she curated her personal style. There was something about authors that was it to me. And so being an author now, I suppose, it's no way it doesn't, you know, I mean, of course I want to get paid and this is my living. But it extends far beyond just that.
I'm wondering if the decline in reading is directly related to that. There's no personalities anymore. So who cares about James Patterson or Michael Crichton?
I've always thought that it like baffled me for years and years and years until I just had to stop thinking about it, is why like authors don't make themselves, not that I'm a sexy personality, but authors, it seems like they don't care anymore, right? They churn out mass work. But when was the last author that made headlines for, you know, behaving badly in a restaurant, or the last
Bret Easton Ellis and Jay McInerney?
But I mean, the 80s Brat Pack author crew is the last one I can think of. And I would love, you know, if there's any listener who has another kind of batch of authors who came up, even the idea of authors hanging out together. I love that. Right. Like Easton Ellis and McInerney, and there was a girl in their crew.
I'm not sure.
I think it was like 4 or 5, but they were like the literary scene, and there's no, or not that I'm aware of at least, no literary scene anymore, which, you know, you had Hemingway and Fitzgerald hanging out too at the same time. And you've had
Burroughs, Kerouac.
Precisely.
All of it. Like, what is that? The Green.
Yeah. All the beat guys.
Greenwich Village.
And then out to San Francisco too, where they're all at the whatever Lights bookstore, City Lights bookstore. And these scenes, and writing was something, and writing still is something today, right? It's just gone away from books, I think, but I don't want it to. A book is like, and I know that I sound like the people who decry internet and want everything to be back to magazines or whatever, where I understand technology moves on, and, you know, by far more people will read my stuff on a Kindle or get an
even
audiobook.
Those people know what you're talking about. Those people actually prefer the book. It's just that they're traveling somewhere and the book is cumbersome.
Yeah.
I don't think there's nearly as many diehard loyalists for magazines in that example you just gave. I think almost everybody prefers the textile, you know, tactile feel of the book itself and the weight of it. And like the cover art is always meaningful, you know?
I mean, even Rarebird, the publisher of both Cocaine and Surfing and this one, Reports from Hell, he was the publisher, came from a music background and a visual background. Okay. And so every book, right, the paperweight is thought about in a choice. The way the cover feels, whether it's matte or shiny, or, I mean, like every bit of the experience of at least with Rarebird's books is thought about, you know, how the cover flaps open, all this kind of stuff. So yeah, it's not just an accident. Okay. Well, you know, we just churn it out. And
I wonder if, the author becoming boring it's kind of reminds me of the surfer becoming boring.
Yeah.
Like we used to have surf personalities from the earliest ones being the best kind of, but then Dora and then all the way up through Andy Irons, let's say. And ever since then, everything's become vanilla because there's so much money in it that Chloe Andino's grooming is to just say the right thing and never be caught with a beer in your hand or a cigarette or anything that could be divisive.
It's funny. I read Brendan Buckley wrote I didn't read his entire piece, but wrote review on, it wasn't a review. It was just something about Andy Irons. I think it was Andy Irons' birthday a couple days ago or something like that. And so wrote something about what Andy meant to him. And, you know, I skimmed it and then went down to the comments and somebody wrote about, you hear all the time, or this guy must have been tangentially related to the industry, said you hear all the time these stories of people who ran into Chris Ward or Andy Irons or, you know, Davidson, or these like, you know, rough, kind of bigger than life personalities. And these stories people have interactions with them, whether they saw him drunk or they got in a fight with him, or, you know, they did something incredibly generous or whatever it may be. So you don't hear stories like that about our, you know, health conscious crew of pros, like where there's no stories about, oh, I saw, you know, I saw Gabriel Medina out doing this, that, or the other thing. Like it's all pretty tawdry if you see it, like him holding hands with Neymar or something like that. But beyond that, there's nothing.
It's about legacy, right? Like those guys who have the stories end up becoming the ones who you remember the most. Like I'm wondering, trying to take an extreme example, like world champ, like Damian Hardman.
Sure.
Will he be, even though he's a world champion, will he be remembered as much as Chris Ward?
No.
In the annals of surf history?
I don't think so.
Or even Chris Davidson.
I mean, will Chris Davidson and Chris Ward, I wonder, will Chris Davidson and Chris Ward die with us? Like, did we as, I don't know, children, or me,
it's a good question.
A child of the grunge era. It's funny. I've been listening, I think I mentioned on the show, listening to 91X now full time, basically. I'm so tired of just the pitter patter of, you know, fear bending news that I'm just over NPR. I'm over all of it. So I listen to 91X, San Diego's alternative, and little 7-year-old daughter will be in the back seat perpetually asking, why is this alternative? What's alternative about it? Why are they calling this alternative? Which is
a good question.
It's a great question, but it's funny to think about because it was alternative for me, right? It was when I was a high schooler, Nirvana was an alternative to, you know, hair metal and to whatever else was happening, but it was the alternative. Now, of course, I mean, it's a meaningless word, alternative, but Chris Ward and all these guys were alternative, right? They were alternative surf stars to me as a kid. Andy Irons too. Kelly Slater represented the mainstream more or less, right? And Andy Irons was the alternative. Now, where did you fall? Did you fall in the what Kelly represented, the, you know, button down, all this kind of thing, or with the raw Andy Irons? But I don't know in next generation or millennials or whoever comes after the millennials, if that matters anymore, right? If they're like, so if Chris Ward and Chris Davidson and even Andy Irons, I mean, Andy Irons was a champ too, so he will live on inevitably. But if anybody cares about their bad antics, or if it's just like, yeah, so like there were a couple white guys who behaved badly and good, cancel, erased.
Yeah. I don't know either.
Yeah. And Damian Hardman will live on as a beacon of good work, putting one foot in front of the other.
Well, I guess
surfing to the criteria.
Also, have we done any work at all to kind of keep Chris Ward's legacy going on? Like, we don't teach the youth about who Chris Ward was.
Here's the thing, though. I get slammed. If I mention Chris Ward, I offhandedly mentioned Chris Ward in a sort of recent-ish, or a couple weeks ago, maybe a couple months ago, Beach Grit article, where I said, it was just a throwaway. I wasn't even trying to think of Chris Ward. I just threw a name on, you know, in an article, and it happened to be Chris Ward. And didn't discuss or anything, just had Chris Ward in there. Somebody in the comments was like, shame on you for promoting this known wife beater, you know, abuser of women, ... So is like, if we brought up Chris Ward and did the Chris Ward hour and talked about all he did and all he was and all he meant, I mean, I'm sure that would push us well closer to cancellation than anything we've done thus far.
And maybe justifiably so, because Chris Ward, the identity that we've talked about of him as a surfer existed before those allegations came out, before he got arrested in Mammoth.
But it's also part of what made him, right? The fact that it's awful, and not justifying it. He beat a woman with an icicle. Wasn't that what it was?
I think that's what the story was.
He threw an icicle at somebody's face or hit somebody with an icicle or whatever.
There was some altercation in the bar, and then it went outside and there was an icicle involved.
I think there was an icicle involved, but whatever it was, nobody thought Chris Ward was cool for doing that.
No.
But it became part of his legacy. And I think that maybe, and I don't know, I hate to sound like an old man here, maybe were we more willing to have wart-riddled people that we watched?
Yes.
Like, where now it's inappropriate to even turn your eyeballs to somebody who did something awful.
The answer is yes, we were more willing to accept somebody with their faults, but also that was a turning point of my appreciation of Chris Ward.
Of course.
It was fun when he was just a wild child and I didn't know any of the reality of what was happening behind the scenes. And maybe there was nothing bad, nothing illegal happening behind the scenes,
there was a lot of smoke around that fire.
Right.
Sure.
But then as soon as you find out, oh no, a woman filed charges for physical abuse, then you go, oh shoot. Well, I got to take him off the hero peg.
Of course, but you can still put him over into the interesting personality peg.
Yeah, of course.
You just slide him over and you don't have to say, oh, Chris Ward is, what a stand-up example of a human being. He was never that. What he was, though, was an interesting surfer who did a lot of awful things. But
there's other surfer examples that we could use, or like in that Beach Grit article of somebody that you could talk about. Maybe it's Chris Davidson, who's equally as interesting.
But I think Chris Davidson I don't know. Chris Davidson for sure has as much baggage as Chris Ward, don't you think?
It's different. If he got busted for drug charges, that's different than hitting a girl.
So, but and not saying, again, no justification for Chris Ward's behavior. And I'm not offering any, I'm not extending any, but it's just, I guess, interesting that you're not even allowed to talk about somebody anymore who has, real heavy baggage.
So this is a perfect segue to the bulk of today's show.
Great.
Because it is kind of about this cancel culture thing. But I'm going to read you a tweet from Ricky Gervais.
Funny man, Ricky Gervais.
Okay, he says, it's common sense now to mistake defending someone's right to say things with agreeing with those things. If you don't support free speech for people who you disagree with, then you don't support free speech. And remember, it's your right not to listen and even say things back.
Completely.
Nailed it.
I don't know how that has so disappeared from the conversation entirely. Like, as much as I dislike Facebook, I am no Facebook fan. I am no Mark Zuckerberg fan, though Mark Zuckerberg sure made me happy with dressing in whiteface and taking his big booty out on the electric foil. Well, are we going to get to that at some point during the show? Okay,
yeah,
but
do it now.
Quick segue, though. We'll come back there. But people are furious. Like, Zuckerberg is enemy number one, right? There's a lot of reasons for people to dislike Zuckerberg. I read there's a fascinating, I think it's New York Times, Maureen Dowd, who writes to Fruity a lot, but did a big interview with Elon Musk. Did you read it?
No.
New York Times, fascinating. Like, highly recommend everyone to read it, no matter what you think of Elon. It's just a fascinating read. Anyhow, he disliked Zuckerberg for one reason, right? I think it was that Zuckerberg's basically hoarded this wealth and this control over Facebook, and it's going to pass down to his family, the way the board is set up at Facebook, which Musk's thing was, we don't do this. This doesn't work well. This kind of legacy, family legacy over these big things, is not what we're supposed to be doing. Interesting point. But I think the reason most people hate Zuckerberg today is he has created a platform for hate speech, right? I never think of Facebook as a platform for hate speech. I think of it as stealing our personal identities, as, really nefariously, basically lying to us all the time about what they are and aren't doing, et cetera, spying on us, all this kind of stuff. A platform for hate speech, I just don't understand. Isn't it just a platform for speech? And I completely get, free speech at some point does become hate speech, very certainly. But it seems like we've pushed that, as a culture, I've pushed that line to saying something I disagree with is now hate speech.
Yes, but I think the point that Elon maybe is trying to make is that the way that the algorithms are set up, firstly, they are to generate clicks and money and revenue to keep people on the site. But the way that they're set up is that enragement is engagement. So the more incendiary things, you're just going to keep getting spun into your own echo chamber. So if you search for, dieting techniques, you end up getting spun down a trail where you're watching, it's about bulimia.
Yeah.
Or if you search for, I don't know, white nationalist, Confederate, whatever, you end up looking at white supremacy videos and that sort of stuff. So that the people who are actually clicking down those holes end up becoming more extreme radicalized versions of themselves. And that's the system was set up that way to enrage because it engages and for them to spend the maximum amount on the site all so that the site can make money.
Sure.
That's what it is.
But
it's not a healthy, and by the way, that all fosters mental illness.
For sure. But I mean, I guess going back to the idea of what I disagree with personally, you no longer have the right to say. I mean, back to just cancel culture in general.
That's insane.
And yeah, to Ricky Gervais's point, like the whole point of free speech is that it's free, not that it's free because I enjoy, free speech is for the speech I enjoy.
Dude.
But people make this argument all the time. People are
so dumb. Did you see that video? A comedian put it out a week ago. It's called Woke versus Racist.
Oh, no.
Oh my God. It's genius.
Okay.
There's a guy wearing a t-shirt that says woke and a guy wearing a t-shirt that says racist. And they have so much more in common than they have in difference.
I mean, for sure.
So the woke guy goes, hey, this Mexican restaurant should only have Mexican people working in it, because it's a appropriation of culture to hire an Asian person to work in the back of the Mexican restaurant making tacos. And the racist is like, I fully agree with you, and like everything that the woke, we need accurate representation. I couldn't even give you the examples because they're so much funnier than anything I could think of. I should just embed them into this podcast right now. It's so well done. And it's only 2 minutes, but like all of the ideals that the woke person has
is very similar.
Were the exact ideals racists had.
Yeah.
The woke person is doing it to kind of allow everybody equal opportunity. The racist was doing it for the exact opposite reason, but they're the same ideals.
But that's where we are.
Yeah.
That is where we are right now.
Yeah.
Canceled.
Yeah. Well, so that's kind of when I was saying that was a segue. There's a bunch of cancellations this week.
Ooh, who got canceled?
Well, I was going to open the show talking about some follow-up, but we'll come back to follow-up stuff. Cancellation, stabbed because of their caption. Quote, Stephanie, this was a caption they wrote on their Instagram. There was a video of Stephanie Gilmore surfing, and the caption read, Stephanie Gilmore draws cleaner lines than a cokehead with OCD.
Canceled.
It was deleted shortly thereafter, quickly.
It wasn't that quick though. It was up all day.
Oh, was it?
It was up all day and had gotten most of the comments when I cruised through were like captions on point, fire emoji caption. People like it was 8 out of 10 were pro caption.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
One that was anti, Jamie Tworkowski.
Tworkowski.
Thank you. Steph is amazing, but this caption sucks. Addiction isn't a joke, and neither is mental illness.
So true. Here's the thing. Okay, so I'm of two minds of this one right here. I think the caption was, I didn't think it was that clever, the caption for one, but I'm, prone to criticize Stab. So that aside, caption, Jamie's point, I completely understand what he's saying. Obviously, drug addiction isn't, funny? What is it? Drug addiction? Which one is not funny?
Steph is addiction isn't a joke, and neither is mental illness.
Very true, right? And I think to Jamie's point, especially in Stab world, if that would have been a Beach Crit caption, I think it would have been different. I would have never made a dumb caption like that to begin with. See, here's the dumb thing. Stab tries to be edgy. This is where Stab gets into trouble with itself. Stab tries to be both edgy and big tent. So Stab tries to be Beach Crit sometimes, but fails at being edgy because they're not funny. They're not witty that way. And so they're pretty good at being big tent, right? And are better and better at kind of being this bigger voice of, you know, what it is, right? Like, I think they've moved into kind of inertia space now. And so to Jamie's point, I think when you have that kind of audience, then you do have to be a little more aware, and just Stab's unawareness. Stab, I think, is perpetual, and they do this all the time, right? They write things that then they delete really quick and scrub from the entire world like they never said it, all in the effort that, hey, we're edgy, we're Stab, we're the cool kids at the back room doing, but they're not that. They're the nerds in the front.
But do you think they're kind of mid-transition? Because they used to be that. When Derek was with Stab, it was edgy. That was a long time ago at this point.
That was a long time ago at this point.
But I think it's been a slow, gradual shift in transition to doing these big tentpole events. Like,
I think they've drafted off Derek for their tone for so many years, and now that tone is threadbare.
The tone is completely diluted, but you're right. They're still drafting off it, and Sam and the powers that be haven't selected a new tone. There isn't this real clear direction for what they want to be. So it's this slow pivot to doing tentpole events like Stab High or Stab in the Dark, but not saying to the staff, we're now doing these things. So I think that when you hire whoever's writing that caption, it's probably whoever's running social media is probably not the highest paid person in the company. And so they're taking more risks because it's not their brand. But they're missing some of the times.
Even if Mikey C or Ashton was trying to take risks, they're just not good at it. That's not what they're good at. The Stab is good at some things. Right. They're not good at being edgy. It has like a real juvenile, I think, juvenile and tone deaf. And that's exactly why Twarkowski, I think, hits on it, right? Because it is juvenile and tone deaf, where if you want to make drug and mental illness references, there's a way to do that that doesn't aggravate or annoy.
And that's kind of where I disagree.
Or if you're going to make that, if you're going to make one of those references, then stand behind it. Stab's problem is they never once stand behind. They never once stand up and say, no, we are planting our flag here. This is what we said. This is why we said it. We're not comparing, we're not making light. We're just making a funny, off the cuff remark. But that's not what they do. They do these things and then they cancel themselves. Stab is perpetually canceling itself.
Well, again, because I don't think that the ownership hasn't directly given the staffers.
The staffers have
the ethos for the brand.
The staffers have no fucking clue. Do you look
exactly?
Did you read Ashton's piece on Jerry Lopez?
I did.
Or Jerry Lopez, sorry.
Derek Hope.
On Derek Hope, yeah.
I did. Yeah, it was cringy.
I mean, shockingly embarrassing. But then they'll even go back in there and take out the worst comments.
Really?
Yeah, they went out and plucked out some of the worst comments about Ashton in there.
Well, so back to Jamie's comment. I agree with Jamie's sentiment for all the reasons you just said, but I disagree in that addiction isn't a joke and neither is mental illness. You have to be able to joke about that. Like comedians, George Carlin, I'm just off the top of my head. I don't remember any. I'm sure he talked about addiction. He probably talked about mental illness too. And that adding levity to it gives us kind of a higher, like, life isn't so serious. We need to be able to joke about it, but he's a comedian and he's hilarious.
The problem is
Stab isn't a comedian.
Stab is not
the problem.
And Stab is not hilarious. That's
right.
So
no,
Stab,
exactly.
It'd be like if somebody who never makes jokes, a woke person, all of a sudden came out and said something about OCD and mental illness, like waiting for the barats and waiting for the plaudits. And so Stab as woke media trying to step out and be doing edgy, drug joke and mental illness joke. It comes off as so clangy that you'll get a guy like Jamie who really genuinely, Jamie does To Write Love on Our Arms. Right. And then he has a new brand that's fabulous too called Needs an Ocean, which you should check out. But Jamie really deals with this
in the
stuff
addiction space
all day, every day. Right. And so again, Beach Grit with its, flippant, dirty tone, I could have said, and I would have done it better because I'm funnier.
Right. I got canceled last week.
For what?
Our conversation about women surfing Chopu.
Ooh.
So this was a comment left in the iTunes reviews.
Canceled.
Says, I have some critiques about this podcast, in parentheses, rarely interviews women surfers for one, but in large part I've enjoyed it. But listening to the host show what I think must be his true nature on the Beach Grit podcast, I just can't listen anymore. These bros are on the wrong side of history. You lost a listener.
Boom.
This was in relation to us talking, I presume, about the women surfing Chopu. So the initial critique is that I haven't interviewed enough females on the podcast. And apparently my true nature was revealed when we talked about.
But did we say that weren't we all pro Chopu?
Yes.
I recall being very pro Chopu.
That's what's insane to me.
The level of performance is going to only go up the more the women surf Chopu, et cetera, et cetera.
That's what that's what's insane to me about the woke kind of cancel culture is you and I as white cisgender males aren't even allowed to talk about women surfing Chopu.
No. I mean, I don't think there was anything negative, but yeah, that's totally
That's
fine,
all
though.
lost a listener.
Great. I mean, I hope that listener can find a podcast, a surf-based podcast that satisfies them. It's the beauty.
You know what's funny? Over the years, as I've tracked, sometimes in the Beach Grit comments section, people like, these guys are so dumb, never gonna listen to it.
We get it in our Instagram all the time. I mean, I guess for the podcast too, in the comments.
But then I notice that same person is still leaving a comment a year later, talking about why they're not listening, but referencing detailed things about what they listened to.
The big stand, I'm not listening, or lost a listener, or especially on Instagram, right? I mean, that's a real unfollow. But this happens to Beach Grit all the time. Unfollowing, where if you're really gonna make your stand there, then you better do it, I think. I mean, if you're gonna unfollow, if you're gonna say unfollow or I'm never listening again or whatever, then unfollow and never listen again.
Totally.
Do what you say.
Totally.
Otherwise, what do your words mean, man?
Are you ever inclined to even, if I've ever been offended so much as to not listen to something, I never made a proclamation.
Never. No,
you know,
because maybe you're going to accidentally, think, oh man, I was in a bad mood, or something else comes up that's interesting that you want to, like, why proclaim? And if you don't like something or if something, you can unfollow real quietly.
Totally. It's really interesting though, this world that we're living in, where I feel like the proclamation is the last vestige of power.
Yeah.
It's like I have
unfollow.
Yeah. Like my voice needs to be heard because I'm a special snowflake. And then you need to know that I'm upset about this.
And if you best change, but if you're not, half the time it's funny. If I'll ever engage, like sometimes people will say something unfollow in a way that amuses me. So I'll hit him back with the why or whatever. Generally they seem to like, oh, and then they'll
every time.
Yeah. They'll not apologize, but they'll, you'll get a decent back and forth.
I'll rib them back usually.
Yeah.
Like find some whatever hypocrisy in something they said and like rib them back with that. And then they almost always jokingly come back and be like, hey, by the way, I love your work or whatever. But by the way, Ricky Gervais, the final quote of that tweet was, and remember, it's your right not to listen and even say things back.
Great.
Perfect. Exercise that right. Other this week's in cancellations, Bex Vadina out of the Beach Grit comments section.
Bex Vadina,
prolific commenter.
The most prolific, I think, of all time.
Got canceled from Beach Grit for talking too much.
Talking too much. See, okay, this is what makes Beach Grit the greatest place on earth, I think, in terms of conversation and culture.
So for those who are just podcast listeners that don't participate with us on any URLs, Beach Grit comments section is a very active place where everybody has an equal voice. I feel like it's the most, if I want to get the vibe of what's happening in the surf world, and I've been out of the loop for a few days and I see a headline on Beach Grit, almost rather than reading your article, I can go straight to the comments section and get a real good kind of
hot take. Yeah.
Straight from the vein of the parking lot fodder. It is the parking lot fodder online, essentially. So Bex Vadina is the most prolific commenter on there in recent, years.
I think since he's come on. I mean,
which has been 2 years, 3 years, something.
I think he's probably been on there for about 2 or 3, but it has far eclipsed, I think, any other commenter in terms of amount.
I noticed he was not commenting a couple of weeks ago because other people were saying, hey, where's Bex? Normally this article would have had 100 comments. Without Bex here, there's only 30, or something. So I randomly got an email from Bex last week and he said, can you believe it? I got totally banned from Beach Grit. They really embrace that cancel culture. No reason given either. Love your work, Bex Vadina. So I replied back and I was like, no, I hadn't heard, but like, what's the story? And then I reached out. I go, you know what? I hadn't heard, but I'll reach out to Chaz and see what the deal is. So you reached out to the moderator, Negatron, and Negatron emailed back yesterday and said he hasn't been canceled. He's been put on a little timeout for a couple of weeks. Couple of reasons. His numbers were through the roof. And he gives me the numbers, but suffice to say, Bex was spending about 60% more visits on Beach Grit than Chaz himself, and 60% more comments than Chaz himself, just for some context. Quote, he doesn't seem to be too worried about the quality versus quantity. I've chatted with him a couple times about this, and I saw him starting to use Beach Grit like someone would use Facebook. Wasn't going to wait until he started posting photos of his meals. The photos of his wife posing on the beach in a bikini was enough. There's certainly room to breathe without Bex taking up a quarter of the comments on every thread. Beach Grit needs an ever-evolving cast of characters. Ultimately, as a mod, I do feel I have a care of duty towards the commenters just as much as I do towards the commentary itself. And Bex needed a break just as much as the commentary needs a break from him. Negs.
Brilliant. So
he said a lot more, but I just summed up.
So here's the thing with this is for those who don't know Beach Grit. I don't have any even control. I think I was given control at one point of the comment section. I don't even know how to use it. Derek, I don't think ever goes into the comment section from the back end.
Right.
So all of that, Derek and I are, writing and whatever we're doing. Every bit of the moderation and the comment curation is Negatron. Negs, I think, has turned curation and commentary into an art form. Like this is what, like he says there, right? He has concern for both the commenters and the commentary itself. So, I mean, precisely what he says about needing, new people for it not to get stale and boring. I think Negs has been in comment rooms enough or on comment boards enough kind of to have seen what goes wrong, to see when, for example, stabs devolved to, before they more or less shut their comments off, stabs had devolved to just people calling each other shitheads, right? I mean, it was just back and forth with like crass name calling. That was it. There was no conversation. He saw that happen. He had seen the way various communities, more or less, because these are communities, have devolved. And he like very early on when we started Beach Grit, he reached out to Derek and said, hey, look at, I've seen the way these things can go. Not give me the comment section, but I'll help you guys. And I was so happy to, Negatron is the biggest part, I will say, of what makes Beach Grit Beach Grit. The way he handles the comments is, genius level artist.
So in the way that Zuckerberg ultimately ended up with so much power and now he's influencing elections and stuff like that, that would be the concern of the current model, is Negs has enough power that if this thing grows beyond just a town square, because I feel like that's how Facebook started off, where it was a town square. We all come here and we share our opinions, and it's, it evolved into the place where it's the actual town itself. This is all of the roads and the infrastructure, and this is where we're paying our money into. They introduced their own monetary system. They have their own marketplace. So now that we all live in this world and there's the puppeteer controlling it, that's where it becomes problematic.
Here's the thing, though, is in the Facebook analogy, Zuckerberg is the emperor, right?
Right.
Beach Grit is the United States of America, where you have me, Derek, and Negatron. I think all the branches are separate but equal.
Currently.
But there's no way I can ever, the way that that Ashton will Jimmy comments on his own articles, like things that are really critical. You could see when Ashton gets his feelings hurt. There will be a very funny pointed comment that will disappear, right? It's not rude. It's not racist. It's rude, but it's not racist. It's not any other thing than mean to Ashton. Ashton will take a certain amount of meanness and then start canceling stuff. I can't do that. You can say whatever you want about me, right? So Negatron, Negs controls that tone, but he doesn't control anything else. We don't go back and forth about what's acceptable. I just think there's something about this separation of powers makes Beach Grit at least a more honest place.
Well, the other detail is I referenced something about or maybe it was just in the email about like kind of the Beach Grit comment section being this bastion of free speech where you're allowed just to go in there and say what you want to say. That's me projecting onto Beach Grit, because there's nowhere on Beach Grit that you guys claim to be the bastion of free speech or that everybody has an equal right to say things.
I think in our back end, in our what we believe, it's that, you know, more or less free speech is wonderful until it becomes petty and boring or something like that. Where, yeah. I mean, which Negs, I think, is always concerned about keeping the communication fresh, where it's not people saying the same things over and over again. Or, I mean, the amount of comments is wonderful, but if you have 300 comments, you know, of people saying the same things they always say, real quickly, that's going to become a dead space. And I think Negatron's always working on injecting new life or keeping new life flowing in, allowing, you know, somebody, because Bex didn't come up big until exactly a couple years ago, right? So he came on and he had a real moment, and maybe he can, when he comes back, hopefully he'll come back, can sort of redefine himself with a more, I don't know, curated offering of comments. But it is important to leave room for people to come up and then be able to say something too.
Yeah, because otherwise it just feels like a closed door. If you're new to the comments section and you just see the same people, if it's intimidating and you don't want to jump in.
For sure.
And especially if you don't have a ton of time. That's the other thing about that Negs referenced that I didn't read, was about how much time it requires to spend on there. And I wonder how much of that is actually healthy. Just like with the example of Facebook, if you're in your own echo chamber getting fed all this extreme stuff, you become this more extreme version of yourself. This can't be good for, we haven't seen studies yet. With enough 20 and 30 years in the future, there will be studies done about social media's influence on mental health, you know,
completely.
And I can't imagine these are good things.
Which I think was, again, Neg's point is like, hey, I'm helping. Bex needed a break, right? I'm giving him a break. Like, whether he thinks he needs one or not is another thing, but I know that he needs one.
What do you think about Kanye West did his first presidential rally
Loved it.
a week or two ago, wearing his bulletproof vest, saying that Harriet Tubman only sold slaves. She never freed slaves. She sold them to other white people.
Yeah.
And so all of the kind of commentary that came out of that was, it was kind of split. One side was like, Kanye is mentally ill and this is embarrassing. Don't poke fun and call him names. Because remember when Anna Nicole was slurring her speech at awards shows, and then a month later we find her dead in a hotel room from a drug overdose? Like, let's not make this situation worse. Let's be sensitive. But then there was a reaction to that going, hey, journalist, you have no right to diagnose mental illness. You know what I mean? Like, sure. How dare you? He's just an asshole, sort of a thing. What are your thoughts on all of that?
I mean, my thoughts were, though, with Kanye, it's getting billed as this bipolar snap, right? That he is so far off the reservation and really needs intervention and needs serious help. I don't really, I mean, yes, the Harriet Tubman comment was totally inflammatory, but on the face, true, right? I mean, she wasn't out breaking slaves out of, you know, she ran the Underground Railroad. Like, she facilitated, and marvelous woman, like, obviously incredible woman. And Kanye's comment about her was, you know, not polite and ill thought or whatever. But I mean, she was taking slaves from one place to another. So on the face, it's a more or less true statement. Same with everything he said, as far as I can tell, about the Kardashian family, right? I mean, looking from the outside at the Kardashians, they seem like a terrible, terrifying, you know, I don't even know what to call it. Just this, all these billionaires now, like these vapid influencer billionaire children, lorded over by what he called Chris Jong-un. Did you read that? He called Chris Jenner Chris Jong-un, which, again, from the outside, seems like it's pretty reasonable. Like, that seems like it's a freaky space to be in, that Kardashian world. So what Kanye was talking about, I don't know that it's necessarily all that crazy. Is it all that crazy? And we all just everybody was real happy to jump on him for calling him, you know, even Chris or Kim's super dismissive Like, well, he's got bipolar, so let's just, if my wife dismissed me in a way where if I was really on a rant, like even if it was a misguided rant or like probably not the right context rant, but if I was ranting and then my wife said, he's got mental illness.
Right.
I would be pissed. I'd be, come on, get my back.
So I'm wondering if that back and forth that they're having very publicly on Twitter is all part of the design.
I mean, who knows? But
they have to get crazier and crazier.
For sure, Chris Jong-un, if it's accidental, she's for sure milking this thing, right? I mean, Kim now gets to be a victim of a husband with mental illness, and so I'm sure they can do a multi-trillion-dollar, ad campaign about my partner. I had a off the rails partner, and and get all kinds of praise and warmth and love, and the Kardashian brand can shine even brighter through this. But I don't know. I'm still Team Kanye, to be honest.
I've never been Team Kanye. The guy is such a douche.
Are you Team Ye right now, though?
No.
Really?
No, he's despicable.
He's in Wyoming making stuff in his garage.
Whatever.
Hanging out with Justin Bieber.
I've stopped paying attention, honestly, until it grows so huge and disgusting that it finds its way into my awareness, like that story did. I so don't care about Kanye.
I'm Team Ye. He probably said something really wrong that I'm going to get totally canceled for now for being Team
because you associated with him.
Yeah, but what I've heard.
But I feel the same way about the Kardashians too. I could not care less about the Kardashians.
Kardashians seem nefarious in a way that Kanye seems entertaining.
He's more entertaining than they are.
For sure. And he's
but
more
I don't
talented.
know that he's more talented as a rapper. They're more talented at making something out of nothing.
At making money?
Making money off zero talent. Sure. That's a talent. I mean, if you can get somebody, I can get somebody to pay me $1 million for doing nothing. That's a skill set.
I'm gonna break with you right there and say what the Kardashians have created in this world, not only is that not a skill set, they are more or less single-handedly responsible for the world turning into idiocracy.
I completely agree with that.
But I'll say it's not a talent either. It's their lack of talent, their black hole of talent. Not only do they not have talent, they've sucked potentially talented people into their world and drained their talent too. Not one bit of talent can exist in the Kardashian black hole.
Well, sadly, they're a reflection of the society we created. They're the result of the society. I mean, I would like to say that they're the ones influencing all of the idiots in society, but it's really the society that venerated idiots who have voluptuous body types.
We're in a real chicken and egg moment right now.
Totally.
Because I would argue that they are actively creating it every day. Without the Kardashians,
I think they are now. Now that they've been given that much kind of influence and platform, they're certainly perpetuating it. But the fact that show ever took off is insane.
Yeah.
And it's a reflection of the society.
So you're Team Kim.
No,
you gotta pick a team here.
No,
if you had
Kanye and Kim are in the same realm in my head, and they're both, I'm not interested in either. But so back to kind of the point of, is this all part of their design? I think with drug addiction, with shareholder value for a publicly traded company, you have to keep upping the ante. You have to keep upping the dose. You have to keep being profitable. You have to double the dose from yesterday to get the high today. That's what they're doing. We're no longer interested in you guys having a little tiff over the kitchen table. You have to be...
Kanye has to be in Wyoming, like
running for president. Yeah,
while Kim is in.
Yeah, exactly. While Kim is somewhere else, shaming him publicly via Twitter back and forth. And they, not just because that's the level of intensity they need in their relationship, it's because that's the level of intensity the public needs to pay any attention.
I totally agree with you there. Interesting point. But real quick, back to the substance of it, or the style of it, I should say. Okay, let's say you on this podcast really went off, right? Let's say you weren't racist or a bigot or sexist or anything, but just really went off on some tangent and it got major airplay. Would you want your girlfriend to say, I'm with David Lee. Like, yes, what he said was totally awesome and screw all you. Like the wife who stood next to her husband with the AR-15 15 in the yard? Do you want your girlfriend to be the girl out there with a pistol, waving it down? A. B. Would you want her to pull the Kim and super dismissively say, you know, David Lee is such a lovely man, but he has sometimes issues with his medication. Sometimes. Or C, would you want her to say, David Lee Scales is a horrible person, screw him, cancel him?
A.
You want her to be out there with the pistol.
Yeah.
Waving the pistol alongside you.
Yeah. I mean, the reality is I'd pick option D, which is she doesn't have to chime in. She doesn't need to be a public figure in this at all.
But I mean, let's say
if she was a public figure and people are asking her opinion, then she has to defend me.
This got to the point where she has to say something.
Yeah.
Okay. So you want defense.
I think the dynamic of the relationship needs to be such that we are a united front publicly, and privately we can have a more nuanced discussion about, you know, who's right and who's wrong, and like how you expect, what you expect from that person, all that sort of stuff. But that's a private conversation.
What about a James Carville, Mary Matlin kind of thing, or a Kellyanne Conway, George Conway dynamic? You
have to opt into that relationship from the get-go.
That's what. Do you think?
So I'm running a private life.
Okay, so
you know what I mean.
But you're a public figure.
Well, now I am. She's not.
Precisely.
She didn't opt into that. She didn't pick a career path that makes her public.
But she picked you.
Yeah, and we haven't had this conversation, but we have a very private life.
So when the mob comes with the pitchforks to your new Newport Beach address,
she's got to get my back.
Pistol.
Yeah.
Pistol waving.
Yeah.
Okay.
Totally.
Okay.
100%. That's the only way to have a healthy personal relationship.
I'd be all for I'm Carville Matlin. I would love my wife to say, I love him, but he is batshit crazy. That's what I want her to say.
Yeah. Does she?
Probably.
I've only seen her defend you.
Yeah, that's probably her general tone, though. Not that I'm batshit crazy. When something would hit her radar and that I did, she would typically defend, unless I was really off the rails saying wild stuff. But then I think she would get I love him, but he's a nut. Look at him.
Well, when we talked recently, we revisited Ashton open hand slapping you. I saw one of her comments was like, I'm still going to punch that guy next time I see him. So I didn't know that she ever cared that much about it in the first place. Because to me, a lot of it was just like all silly nonsense.
For sure.
But she took it seriously.
I mean, she is a street fighting snowboard kid from, like, she's a scrapper. She is not she is a dirt kid.
Well, let it be known, Ashton. Yeah. She's coming for you. Okay. I've got a couple of listener feedback from our past show talking about the WSL and their new format. I don't really care about that anymore. I feel like that's old news.
It was interesting. I read Nick Carroll's whole take on it. Did you? I think it was on Surfline or Coastal, wherever he writes. Nick did a sort of like a New York magazine, New York Times-esque, you know, now that this thing has happened, really sort of peeled back the layers of, from his sources, WSL had been for sale, but before COVID, for 150 mil. Once COVID, and they were selling the platform, right? They were selling what ELO had promised. And then once COVID hit, you know, off the market, what is there to buy when you can't do events? And then this, you know, Nick details this massive, you know, shift restructuring to what came out as the revamp tour. All of it I'm looking at thinking, what the hell? Why are people talking about this like it's the government of some major country? I still don't understand why A, they didn't make good content when they had all the time in the world and that's what they promised. B, I don't understand once they decided, okay, we need to radically shift this tour because of, you know, A, pandemic, B, whatever, we're not being able to sell these events like we thought we would. Why didn't they tell the surfers to go kick rocks? I do not understand. They really talk about, we have these stakeholders in the surfers. The surfers are our most valuable asset. Da, da, da. Yes, they're your most valuable asset. There is no alternative for them. This is called a monopoly. There's no Rebel Tour. There's no hope of a Rebel Tour. There's nothing. You dictate to the damn surfers. You make something good, A. The surfers are all worried about, of course, I'm worried about flying halfway around the world and losing in the first heat of my contest and getting kicked off tour. Well, guess fucking what? You lost in the first heat of the contest because you sucked or you had an off day or whatever. You're a pro athlete. You roll the stinking dice and this is what happened. God, sorry, you don't have to go home. We'll put you up. How about that? We'll put you up, and as the WSL, we'll put you up in a hotel and we'll send a video guy with you. And we'll make some extra content about it'll be called Losers Round, right? Stinking shows all day for Eric. Call it Losers Round, where you just go do a bunch of content based on the losers of the first round. Are they crying? Are they surfing? What are they doing? Are they feeling? Etc. Right? But I don't understand this paranoia, this real sensitivity about if the surfers aren't on board, then we're screwed. Right. Guess what? The surfers don't have to be on board. The surfers have nowhere else to go.
Right.
Am I an idiot?
No, this is what we've been saying all along.
But why? I would love for a listener. I would love for somebody, because I really am not trying to be an asshole. I'm really trying to figure out why anybody cares about what the surfers think besides the surfers. I would care what the surfers think in terms of if the wave is an equality that they like. Exactly. I only care about stuff that is specifically related to performance. If they're saying the World Surf League is rolling us into crappy waves in crappy windows with crappy, whatever, then I would say, listen to the surfers. They should listen to the surfers about 100% of the locations.
Them using the excuse of we got to make sure the listener or the surfers are on board. Do you think that that's just blaming somebody else for their lack of decision making?
No, because it seems like from Nick's reporting, it really does seem like it kept hanging up on the surfers not, they needed to have, like, initially, I guess it was pitched that there would be no more no losers round, right? How many surf fans want a losers round? How many surf fans are into watching
none
a heat of surfers or no consequence heats, more or less, right? Or seeding heats or whatever you want to call them. I think, and so when you're treating the surfers as your stakeholder, as opposed to who should be the stakeholder, not that they have any stake, but are the eyeballs of people watching this thing, right? This is who you should be crafting your product for, not the stinking surfer who is afraid that he's going to lose his paycheck if he, doesn't have 3 shots to try to make a heat.
Right.
I completely understand the surfer wanting that. That doesn't make good viewing.
Definitely not.
And also, there would be a way, we've talked about it before here, put them all on stinking salary and you win more, base, but you have a base salary of this, so you don't have to worry. And once you lose, then you have to go in the content pool where you're out hustling content now, right? Mm-hmm. You're going to be, they could figure out, I could sit in a room and figure out shows for the most, or episodes for the most boring CT surfer.
Right.
You go out and have Yago show you how to, okay, now Yago lost first round. He's going to go show you how to do an air reverse, right? It's a 15-minute, you put your hand here, let's try it together, whatever, right? And that's what you got to do when you lose.
So you're pitching a bunch of ideas right now.
Really good ones.
This is the R&D laboratory for WSL content.
I mean, we got stinking Jonah.
We are Snapchat for Facebook.
Yeah.
Truly. And so you were referencing Jonah. So over the years, we've talked about the tour needs to adjust in these ways. And then within a year or two, the WSL makes the exact adjustment that we've talked about. Listeners will message us and say, hey, didn't you guys talk about reducing the number of surfers or whatever the thing is? And I always say, yeah, we did talk about that, but
everybody was kind of.
It's in the ether. Yeah. Like, honestly, that's a logical conclusion for how to improve their business.
Well, I feel all we're doing really on this show particularly is curating
the ideas that are already out there.
Exactly. We're riffing on the ideas that everybody, I didn't have one original idea.
So yes, the WSL implemented what we talked about, but we're probably not responsible for the genesis of the idea, right?
Except for Jonah Hill.
After saying that a dozen or 24 times in the last 2 years to listeners and justifying that we don't accept responsibility for it, we talk about Jonah Hill.
Specifically Jonah Hill. And
2 weeks ago.
And you cut
2 weeks ago.
You cut a video clip even of specifically
promoting it out there.
Of the Jonah Hill should be the ultimate surfer, however it was
That's
titled.
What we talked about it. And I even said, yeah, this is obvious to Chaz and I in hindsight, looking back at quarantine, this is what they should have done with that time. However, they can still do it in the future because we still have downtime before tour goes back around the world. So they should implement this today. 2 weeks later, they release an episode with Jonah Hill. So do we take responsibility for that one or not?
100% for that one.
Okay.
That was so specifically an idea that came from here.
Then my follow-up on that is they still got it wrong.
They totally got it wrong.
Like, it's still terrible. The version that we pitched is Jonah Hill go up to Surf Ranch, Kelly Slater teach him how to
get barreled.
And here's all the reasons why that works. Jonah Hill's not working right now because they're not filming anything in Hollywood.
He wants to surf Ranch.
He'd be desperate to surf Ranch. Like this would be the
he'd be desperate to get instruction. It wouldn't even have to be Kelly. It could be you could have Leonardo Fioravante teaching Jonah Hill how to do something.
This makes sense on all these levels. The version that they gave us was Mick Fanning interviewing him via Zoom as a podcast, and which solidified for me something that I hadn't really thought. Mick Fanning, I've had enough of Mick.
Mick became for some reason in COVID times, Mick Fanning became the face of surf journalism, more or less, or the public face of surfer interview for both Stab, WSL. Mick is everywhere interviewing everybody. And Mick is fine. He's not a horrible interviewer. Do you think it's not like it's egregious, but Mick talking to Jonah Hill was so awesomely uninteresting that they took a great idea and just like fumbled it.
We all will give Mick a chance because he's a 3-time world champ and we all love him and like whatever. But your original complaint, the famous complaint, he's boring. He's boring. He's a vanilla surfer, which I would argue against that point as a surfer, but who he is as a surfer is who he is as an interviewer. And it's completely predictable. It's right down the middle. It'll give you he'll follow the script of what the producers told him to do.
Get you a 7.6 every time.
And he will get eyeballs because everybody gives Mick a free pass because we all venerate our heroes in surfing.
Here's the problem though. How much longer can Mick go giving pretty vanilla bland interviews and people still tune in?
I'm now out.
Yeah.
I gave him a bunch of free passes because I kind of wanted to see what Gabriel Medina had to say and whatever else. At this point, I'm like, dude, I'm over it.
Yeah.
I'm completely over it. This is pathetic that we venerate these guys so much. They just get a free pass.
So my question is though, because Mick was the face of Stabs, whatever it was called, right? No contest, or no contest, or Unplugged, which turned into no contest, it turned into something related to no contest.
Right.
Where now that it's not going to be no contest, we're going to go talk about the spots where the tour was and talk about history. Is that still ongoing?
I didn't watch that.
I don't either. But so he really was Stab heavy.
Yeah.
Now he's WSL's face for this, this, and this. Is Stab and the WSL, do they have an actual relationship now? Do you think they've tied in more or less Stab's editorial for whatever it is directly now into the WSL?
Maybe.
Ashton Goggins.
I mean, the ones that I've seen highlighted, the media partnerships are the Inertia with the WSL and Surfer Magazine with the WSL. Yep. I haven't seen that they've officially entered into any.
But I wonder if
it's more covert.
If it's fully like a Stab is getting, there's revenue share there. There's like a full on melding together of the WSL and Stab where Inertia will still be the Inertia, Surfer will still be the Surfer, but Stab will eventually roll right into the WSL and more or less be the WSL's media arm.
Yeah, possible. By the way, when I saw the Jonah Hill thing, I'm not even mad about it. Like, I'm glad because I want to see more of Jonah Hill. I like Jonah Hill. I just get bothered that they get it so wrong.
They did it wrong.
The middle down the road play that is so vanilla, it only dilutes everybody's.
I am offering all these brilliant ideas here, not for money. Like, I'm not saying, hey, WSL, wink, wink, I've got something, call me and we'll discuss it because I roll out so many good ideas here and I would love for them to take and make properly any single one.
I agree. And
no credit. They could credit stinking Ashton Goggins for the idea if they want to. I don't even care about credit.
I don't either. There's, I think what's interesting though is now without the world tour being a thing, all of these small media companies, us included, by just incorporating video, like have opportunities to gain visibility and market share. Like I talked about the vloggers never missing a day of work. You know, Jamie O'Brien has only grown in awareness and influence while the WSL has been sitting down on the job in terms of generating content. Go ahead.
I got something for you here though. Do you ever check out Wasted Talent?
No.
Wasted Talent, I think, is a shop, a surf shop in Hossegor or somewhere. It's in France, but they also do have an online magazine-y kind of thing, interview thing. And it's, you know,
I saw him interview Jay Davies.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They do interviews. So they did a recent interview with,
Wade?
No, with Craig Anderson.
Oh, okay.
Great interview, like a great peek behind the curtain of what Craig's been doing the last, you know, Craig, I think, is not super out front. And so to get sort of insight into what Craig's been up to was fascinating. But Craig ended his thing with, or the interview with, fuck the WSL and fuck vlogs. Boom. Hammer dropped. And I was thinking, I've been pondering it since. Fuck vlogs. Huh. He didn't elaborate on it, but why fuck vlogs? Or what have vlogs become, or what do they represent? Is he talking specifically about the Jamie O'Brien, Ben Gravy style, where it's sort of,
it's got to be,
it's a clown show, but that's what it's supposed to be. They're not Jamie O'Brien and
I know it's supposed to be, but just like we hate the Kardashians for what they represent.
So that's become, and they're the ones that are getting the most eyeballs. And Craig Anderson is there saying, fuck this. This is not surfing.
You guys riding a pink soft top and like doing a TikTok dance on the beach for views is pathetic.
Okay.
That's
boom.
probably what it is.
There we go. Solved it. What do you feel about that? About Craig's sentiment?
I'm not bothered by it.
I like that he has it.
Yeah.
I like that surfing is still a sort of nomadic art to Craig. It's not something that it's something that you hold and cherish and love, not something that you trot out in a clown costume on stage at a kid's party.
Yeah. And so I like that Craig represents what Craig represents, and that Craig's going to keep doing his thing and it's anti the other thing. But I still see the value of what Jamie O'Brien's doing. Neither one like offends me on a personal, as a surfer.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It doesn't affect me as a surfer either way.
Reading Craig made me think, oh, maybe I should say fuck vlogs too. It made me think there's validity in that camp. Maybe.
You know, okay, so
I don't want surfing to be clownish.
Add this to your data set for when you make a decision. I watched Jamie O'Brien's wedge video like in its entirety. It was the first time I've ever watched one of Jamie O'Brien's things for the full 20 minutes.
I mean, Jamie O'Brien's an absolute animal, especially surfing the wedge.
He's riding his branded soft top at the wedge, and I felt like it was really overt, like him trying to sell this soft top. He's probably got a back end of the profits, right?
Sure.
It was the wrong board to ride out there.
Ooh.
No matter, as much as he's like forcing, and he's even going on Instagram, like, this board's so sick, I had such a good time on it, blah, blah, blah. And I'm watching him surf it going, dude, that completely inhibited your surfing ability.
What should he have been on?
A pointy thruster that he rides Pipeline with, you know? Like, and I mean, he rides the soft top at Pipeline too, but he surfed the soft top unbelievably well, better than anybody else could surf that soft top, but it wasn't the right board for what he was doing. You know what I mean? I just thought, dude, I can appreciate needing to monetize and all that sort of stuff, but you're not being fully truthful here.
The fact that Jamie is such a good surfer, and the fact that he can make almost any board in, I mean, Jamie O'Brien can ride a stinking plank and get barreled on it. He could ride, I mean, Jamie O'Brien, I'm going to give good ideas to Jamie O'Brien now. Jamie O'Brien should do a show called What Can I Barrel? And he should try to take any manner of things and see if he can get properly tubed on like a ladder.
2x4.
Oh yeah, on a 2x4. What could Jamie...
Dyson vacuum.
Exactly. What could Jamie O'Brien get tubed on? Jamie?
That's hilarious.
Take it and run.
I like it. Man, you're cranking out ideas today.
All day.
So talking about these individual smaller media companies being able to like make pinpoint turns in response to COVID, in response to this new world we're living in. And the WSL is this giant cruise ship that has to plan out a turn long in advance and therefore never makes the turns.
But I don't like, keep going.
Stab Magazine.
Oh yeah.
The Stab Surf 100. I'm a fan of this idea.
What is it?
Okay. Surf 100 is a 100-minute wave riding exposition that is judged live at a later date by the internet. All of this is done following social media distance guidelines, blah, blah, blah. The first rendition of Stab 100 will be San Clemente's favorites, Chloe Andino, Griffin Colapinto, and Ian Crane, they'll paddle out for a 100-minute wave riding demonstration at lower trestles. While negotiating the normal crowd, they'll attempt to capture the best 2 waves, a left and a right video section in this allotted time. The surfers can ride as many waves as they want in this 100-minute session. Each wave will be considered a separate clip that can be used in their final section. Each section will consist of 2 clips, one left, one right, and they'll be judged out of a 100-point score. The best section, according to the internet, wins. The show will be anchored by team of analysis and thought leaders Dane Reynolds, Taylor Knox, Salema Masakela. Points are scored on a 100-point, blah, blah, blah. Ultimately, they already filmed it. They're going to release it at once this Thursday night, Pacific Standard Time. And then the internet will all watch it and score it, and a winner will be picked.
Great.
So 3 surfers, free surfing in a video clip format. We all watch it. We all vote.
What does Sal have to do with it again?
He's one of the commentators. They're going to have, they've already shot all the stuff, but it'll be Taylor, Dane, and Sal watching it with everybody on the internet live, providing commentary. So what's one other detail that's important for us to analyze? They're selling it for $10 if you buy it in advance, or $14.99 the day of.
Okay.
So this is something that we've talked about the WSL. There's been different versions of it. Taylor Knox did Intersection back in the day. And we've talked about, like, look, we just want to see the best surfers surfing the best waves. Why not send all these guys off to an island? They can pre-package it, you know, put it out as a pay-per-view thing. This is a version of this idea that we've rehashed over and over. I love that Stab's doing it. I think with Stab High or whatever, there's always kind of missteps along the way. It's hard to do a live production. So I think it was a smart improvement over Stab High in that this isn't live. They filmed it all in real time and they'll package it, you know, edit it basically, but we'll get a better version of it than if they were just trying to do live commentary and live streaming. And then, you know, somebody unplugged it during Stab High. And so there was those technical issues.
And so it's 100 minutes of just 3 surfers, the first one.
Fighting the crowds, trying to get the best waves out of the crowd.
So it's an hour 30, more or less, of watching Dane, or who is it again? Who are the
Kaloe, Ian Crane, and Griffin Colapinto. And we're going to, their best right, best left are what ultimately gets scored by us, the viewing public.
How does that take an hour 30?
So maybe the final package isn't 100 minutes.
Okay.
Maybe the final edited package isn't.
So the first one will be like a 10-minute.
Who knows?
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay.
I love this idea. The crux for me is paying $10 for it.
Yeah.
Which I also am fully okay with monetizing in whatever way needs to be profitable for the business. I can't imagine I don't know what their expenses are, firstly. The video production is the expense. I doubt they're paying the commentators. Are they paying Dane, Taylor, and Sal?
I'm sure they're getting a little bit. I mean, are they going to be at home? Are they going to be doing it via Zoom?
They didn't say.
Sal's been a big sissy in the COVID, so
they probably, from a responsibility standpoint, that's what they would do, is do it remotely.
So you'll have a Zoom call with Taylor, Dane, and Sal over top this footage that you're paying probably $10 to $14 for.
Probably.
That seems pretty awful.
I think it's a steep price.
It seems like something that would be okay if you happen to catch it while it was on, but to come out of the gates and pay for it seems odd.
So again, I don't think, whatever their expenses are, even if it's just the video production, I don't think there's going to be enough people that give them $10 to justify that. So it's probably going to be a losing venture anyways, which makes me think there should have been a different business model at play, the sponsorship business model or something.
I'm more excited for the after party of all these Stab things, which is essentially all Stab commenters going in and saying, we hate you for charging, and Stab, for some unknown reason, responding with, this stuff costs money, man. Stop being such a cheapskate, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, I think the only way this works is if the clips that they generate out of this one session are the most revolutionary lowers clips that we've seen. Because we get to see lowers free surf clips for free all of the time.
I mean, the problem is, though, really, for sure, but the real problem is if you're going to roll this out, I don't care. I feel no competition between Chloe, Griffin, and who is it again?
Ian Crane.
I feel zero I don't care who wins there. Like, great. But if they had Gabe and Idolo somewhere, then I would say, okay, this, you know.
Or somewhere also really good that draws your eyeballs.
Somewhere
Lowers is ubiquitous.
But also with people who have a natural rivalry, right? Or, I mean, there's no rivalry there.
That's true, yeah.
Like, how can you have, if you're going to make it somebody's going to win, I don't care. Great.
Well, so that's what they're selling. Really what's for sale here is who's going to win this thing.
Sure.
Because watching lowers clips has zero value to us.
Do you care who wins out of Ian, Kolohe, or Griff?
No, but I'll find out who wins immediately after the fact.
Will you care at all?
No.
If you hear
no.
Ian won, would it?
I'd be surprised that Ian won. But the other thing is we're probably going to see the clip that Ian won on anyways after the fact. So all that they're selling for $10 is the drama of who wins in this moment. The waves itself won't be worth the $10 because we see lowers surfed phenomenally.
But again, the competition is not interesting.
Exactly. No, exactly. So all they're selling is this one thing that also isn't really that interesting.
Well, it'll be
they've misvalued it.
It'd be fascinating. Or if you're going to roll one out, your start one for your $10, roll out people. I mean, I've already said it. Roll out people who people want to see compete and who there's a natural.
Chris Ward would have been a good one here.
Epic.
Chris versus Kolohe.
Chris versus Kolohe.
That would have been it.
Yeah. Yeah. People would have watched. I would have watched that.
Yeah.
I will not watch this.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I applaud them for trying these things for sure.
Do you think Ashton feels bad that he's not? I think Ashton has spent the last year really trying to position himself as one of the voices and faces of surf commentary, surf journalism, surf media. And it seems like he's being removed more from, like, for example, the no contest with no contest, where they were just riffing on wherever the contest was supposed to be. Ashton, I didn't watch it, but Ashton, I think, was on there, but not billed anywhere. It was Mick Fanning now as the front and center to that thing. Ashton sent it through, I think, his socials as like, hey, come watch me do this new thing. But Ashton's name was never in any of it. Do you think that Stab has thought, and Red Bull have thought, ooh, Ashton is maybe not the best look?
I don't know. I have no idea what those conversations are. I think your original question, though, is he's really tried become the voice. Hard. Yeah, I think
the fact that he's not even that it's Taylor, Dane, and Sal.
Right. I'm wondering if it was more of a response to the comment section, because the comment sections are always pretty cruel to him, even on their own website, of like Ashton, when he was doing the no contest thing, they're like, get away from the front of the camera. We don't need you on camera. And then B, don't put any clips of yourself surfing in there. Like everything that you do feels like you're trying to be front and center of this thing.
His writing about sitting inside of Derek Ho on West Swells at Pipe was one of the most delicious sentences ever penned. Did you read that?
I did. Yeah, I did.
Sitting inside.
I know.
Derek Ho on the West Swells. So awesome. Yeah.
It was cringy.
Very funny.
I wonder too, you know what's weird is like,
I'm sorry, Ashton.
Again, drawing these analogies from like mainstream media and what's happening, where like, and then mainstream surf media, WSL, you're not going to get as good of content out of the WSL as you are going to get out of name the vlogger. Yeah. Name the clip from a pool where there was a 14-year-old this last week doing something crazier than we've seen anybody do in the ocean.
Sierra like Kerr just crushing.
Yeah, but Jacob Zekle or whatever his name is, doing that finger or Superman finger flip was crazy.
Yep.
And then within a day, Sierra Kerr doing the full rote stale grab.
Yeah.
To then we talked about last time, Aaron Brooks doing the full rote. And then just yesterday I saw Nick
Cordero.
No. What are the three brothers out of Encinitas? Jake Halls.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
The Hurley kids from back in the day.
Yeah.
Nick, whatever his name is, he's a goofy footer, doing some crazy backflip spin.
Okay, here's the thing. I had a question about this directly for you. Finish your thought, though.
Yeah. Well, what I was going to, Nick Marshall.
Yeah.
The Marshall brothers. We're at a point, and with the mainstream media too, like we can't trust CNN. CNN has become to Trump what Fox News was to Obama, right? We can't trust Fox News. We're more likely to get accurate reporting about a protest from a random Twitter account called big titty anime 69. You know what I mean? Like that is where the truth is now coming from. And it's like, unfortunately, they also have really strong views about UFOs.
Yeah.
But big titty anime 69 is going to give us more truth
Yep.
than CNN will at this point. That's what's happening in surfing.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, WSO, we stopped paying attention. Hey, Surfer Mag, we stopped paying attention. At this point, Stab to a certain degree, but just random Jacob Zekle will post a better clip than Kelly Slater this year.
I have a question about, you're totally right, I think. I mean, it's completely gone off the rails in terms of at least the Big Ten stuff. Like they're missing the storylines, I think, in the weeds.
Right.
Or just even in the field itself. But the finger flip is what started my thinking of, wait a second, if we jump the shark on this, is pool airs going to get so kooky and crazy and guys are going to be doing bizarre stuff. It's like, whoa, but they only ever happen in a pool because that's where you have to do that stuff, right? And they get so teched out weird that it's like watching crazy street skating, like flat ground street skating, where they're doing a bunch of crazy kick flips and, you know, board varial, whatever, spinny kind of stuff that just becomes blur. Like, that's what I'm wondering. Is this, the finger flip thing made me think this seems really like a novelty trick, not like surfing anymore.
Yes, I'm very concerned about that. I mean, we've prophesized this from 3 years ago when we really were looking at a global, how our pool's going to change the way things happen. And we envision a Rick Kane scenario where there's a kid who learns how to surf in Lemoore and perfects it and then tries to go apply it in the ocean. How that'll... What
did you feel when you watched, give me your range of emotion from the first time you saw the finger flip to today?
Complete astonishment when I first saw it, mind blown. I'm thrilled that every single outlet is going to post this again because I want to watch it 20 times. And I still feel blown away by it. I feel like if I don't want to give too much credence to it happening in a pool, like that's not going to be the best clip that I've seen this year. But I want to acknowledge that he can perfect that in a pool and then go out in the ocean and apply what he's learned in the pool.
If you see that in the ocean, if you paddle out, say, to your local next time, and somebody busts a finger flip Superman, are you going to say, oof, yes, killing it, surfing is progressing?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I can see that being a good thing for progression. The pool expediting it.
I'm just an old man, I suppose. It feels to me like a gimmicky novelty. Like,
well, the trick itself,
I got a spinning bow tie.
Yeah, the trick itself is very techy. So if we're talking about, is a finger flip as cool as, I don't know, my favorite move is the club sandwich.
Sure.
You know, like power, explosiveness, whatever. The finger flip is the techie version, so I would argue against that. But I think that the pool is expediting progression.
For sure.
Yeah. And I think there's value to that.
I don't know.
But I don't think the pool will ever be the clip of the year. That's the other thing is the sheer nature of knowing what the wave is going to do before it does it zaps all of the drama that we love out of surfing.
We sure are, though. I will say we've whatever shark got jumped, we definitely jumped a shark, not in necessarily a negative way, but we're in new with, I think that finger flip, we're in new ground now.
Agreed.
Like Zoltan Torkos's, bizarre kickflip things, didn't, even register on the radar other than kind of being amusing,
right,
or his thing kind of being amusing. This now it feels like, hey, we are in some kind of new era, at least with the bleeding edge of progressive surfing. But I don't know that I necessarily like where that's going. But then it means I'm just a Luddite who I like my surfing rail in the water and a lot of water being thrown.
Yeah, I agree with you. There's two different things happening. The Zoltan thing was novelty because he was kind of, he was ollieing for most of those. Eventually he figured out how to do it off the lip, but even that was kind of an ollie. And there wasn't very much traditional surfing talent in that, what he was doing. He was kind of gangly on his feet, didn't have a lot of style. He'd look for a flat section to do this thing that looked more like skating than it did surfing. Jacob, on the other hand, is clearly an amazing surfer and a talented surfer.
Rip down the line.
Super powerful. And if you've ever seen him in the ocean, he's crazy good surfer. So he was incorporating, I mean, he hit that air section, got tons of pop, loft, everything that you need to do a proper air, and then incorporated a tech trick into it. So conflating him and Zoltan aren't really apples and apples, you know?
I don't want to, but just in terms of, that's where my mind went sort of initially.
Yeah.
I was completely blown away too when I saw it, but then
how buttery it was.
Yeah, it was, and the way he wrote out of it, so clean. I mean, every part of it was insane, but it did make me worry that if surfing goes to a real, also because in a pool, boards are going to change drastically. You don't need any paddle power anymore, right? So our board's going to get really weird looking where they're basically like fat discs kind of.
Yeah, they could be.
And then and I suppose at that point then pool surfing is just something different than ocean surfing entirely.
But at the end of the year, which clip is going to be remembered? And it's going to be some mutant grower slab of somebody paddling in, making this crazy drop, having to navigate, and all of this drama that comes with the unexpected. I mean, that's what surfing is.
Italo's first wave at the box, first wave ever at the box is still the one that I can recall almost, frame by frame. Yeah. Him like going, teetering at the bottom, tucking in. I mean, the whole thing, which I guess, to your point, it's the unexpected. And the fact that was his first wave ever at the box. So he didn't even know. He didn't even know what to expect.
Exactly. Yeah. It's his first wave ever, but it also happened to be in his heat.
There we go. I guess the preternatural ability for your body to adjust to unknown conditions is what makes surfing so fascinating.
That sums it all up.
Whereas your body getting practiced to do this thing, even if the thing is phenomenal, is very much less interesting to me.
One thing is expressing your dominion over your surfboard. And the other one is conforming to the will of Mother Nature in like a split second kind of attunement.
Yeah.
Those are wildly different things. And the second one is so fascinating because we can't wrap our heads around how Italo was able to do that and anticipate it and adjust. The other one is gymnastics.
Yeah.
And the gymnastics are just the result of repetition,
training,
and skill. Refining and skill, which it's interesting to see who has the most dominion over their surfboard, but it's a totally different thing.
Yeah.
It's gymnastics.
Yeah.
So we know what we want. We want the ocean thing, but we're still curious that guy did that thing.
Yeah, totally.
You have a hard out in 7 minutes. So
I can extend a bit.
But let's go to commercial.
Okay.
We'll try to keep you on your timeline. Let's go to commercial. It's late in the show anyways. Go to commercial. We'll be back with Barrel or Not. Chaz, welcome back.
What a show, David Lee.
This has been 90 minutes already. It feels like 10.
Just flew by.
Jeez. Okay.
Guess who we have coming up on Dirty Water, I think today.
Who?
Tomorrow. Bobby Martinez.
No way.
Yep.
Good job.
Banger.
Good job.
Banger guest.
That should be interesting.
Yeah. Fun show.
Yeah, you guys have... I like that you get good, like getting Britt Merrick to talk about his high school.
LSD?
Yeah, his high school ne'er-do-well days.
Yeah.
Because that's not how we know him now.
No.
So.
Yeah, no, Derek and James are doing, I think, a phenomenal job of curating guests.
Good job, yeah. Okay, so Barrel or Not, I was thinking about this because of all your kids don't get to celebrate high school graduation in 2020.
My poor daughter.
How do you feel about the high school superlatives? I think that's what they were called.
Hit me.
This was in the yearbook.
Mm-hmm.
Best looking.
Oh, yeah.
Best personality. Best dressed. Best physique.
Yep.
All of those. And then
most likely to be...
Exactly.
Yeah.
We deem these high schoolers the most popular at this thing.
Yes.
How do you feel about that having existed and now not having the opportunity in 2020?
It makes me feel very sad that they don't have it. I think harsh judgment is what makes you better.
I agree.
Being judged ruthlessly and brutally by
high school
your peers.
Superlatives, barrel
all day, every day. Roof dragging, standing up, arms high above your head, barrel.
Okay.
Being harsh judgment has never been a bad thing. When
I agree.
the mob jumps on and starts beating people up, judging harshly, that's one thing. But the cool kids and or the nerds in this case, right? It's never the cool kids who were the high school yearbook staff. So it's this odd group of nerds typically picking who they think are going to be the best at this. Or
I remember we all voted.
Really?
It was Democratic.
I don't think it was Democratic in my high school.
Well,
I think the yearbook staff picked.
So I think obviously beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So clearly, like, you don't want to pick the ugliest person.
Yep.
That's mean. But let's get real. There is the best looking person in high school.
There just is.
And sometimes it's a close 1, 2, and 3, but there is a best looking person in high school. Should we celebrate that person for good looks? Not more than the person who's most likely to become president.
But we should celebrate
Let's talk
them.
about both. Yes, good looks.
Here's the dang thing. Knowing I'm all for climbing out of your status, right? Like,
Yes,
I am all
100%.
for being recognized as an ugly person and thinking, you know what? I don't like that. I am going to do everything I can to become beautiful. I'm going to work out. I'm going to, go shopping, whatever I'm going to do. I'm going to eat better, ... But to know you have to be judged and categorized there in order to jump out. If we're all just this mush of the same,
Exactly.
then nobody's the most good looking.
Exactly.
I don't want to live in a world, David Lee, where nobody is most likely to be president.
And totally. And by the way, for anybody who like tries to level the playing field, so to speak, they're lying to themselves. They have attraction to some people more than others.
Yep.
They have predilections towards you're denying your own, what makes you essentially human.
Well, and all you're doing then,
insane.
I think also you're opening it up for kind of insidious, ugly versions because people are always going to judge. And so now what are you going to be judging on your wokeness?
Exactly.
Or there's going to be some other ugly kind of...
Totally hypocritical.
Yeah, there's no perfect utopian, we're all wonderful.
Now, here's what's weird, though. I was thinking about some of the categories that were in our high school yearbook. Biggest flirt was one of them.
Of course.
I mean, that's kind of just like who was sleeping around the most.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
When it came, and there was also best physique. That was the chick with the biggest boobs.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
In my school it was.
Yeah.
I think maybe that changes now. Maybe a more athletic build is more valued nowadays.
I mean, it could be the biggest butt at this point. Let's be honest.
It could be the biggest
back
butt.
to Kim Kardashian.
Right.
Yeah, but the values change, but so then the person who won gets to change.
Right.
Great.
But it's funny that what the title was always kind of slightly different than what it actually meant.
I mean, for sure, at my high school, at least, it was only ever just a popularity contest anyways.
True.
And so the various popular people would get slotted into wherever they got slotted.
Right.
And that would be that. But still, that was fun.
What did you win any categories?
I can't recall. I don't think so. Did you?
I got best personality.
Nice. Good win.
I don't think I would win that today.
No, what would you win today?
None of them. But I saw a motivational whatever tweet or something the other day, and it was like, if you met yourself today as a stranger, would you like you?
Would you?
No, I don't think I would.
Would you?
I had a real
what would you think you were?
Aloof and arrogant, probably.
Wow.
But I think in high school, I cared what people, I actually liked people too.
Yeah.
So I wanted to be liked, and I also wanted to know about people. I was more curious about people, and so I would make a real effort when meeting people to listen to them and talk to them. I think now I'm so exhausted from talking on the podcast.
You don't care anymore.
Dude, if I go get my coffee, please don't talk to me. I just want to keep my head down. I don't want to talk. And I think that comes across as arrogant to people.
Hearing my own dang voice, I can't stand, if I'm at a party, I'm so happy to shut up and quietly sit.
Me too.
Quietly sit and observe.
Often that comes across as arrogant.
I guess so. Yeah.
So when I read that tweet, I was like, ugh, I wouldn't like me if I met me today.
Yeah.
Am I going to change anything about it? No, probably not. My heart's in the right place. What do I care?
Maybe your high school self has just had bad taste.
I think my high school self was a better human being in a lot of ways.
Yeah. With worse taste.
Yeah, probably. At any rate, sad those kids won't get to experience that level of
humiliation and or pride.
Shame is always good for you.
So good.
That's why I read Beach Grit comments sometimes. I need to
a dose of shame.
Slap me in the face with whatever was, ridiculous.
Hit me.
Okay. Barrel or Nah, number 2, based on Jacob's Air, front traction.
unless you are doing something that requires front traction, i.e. big airs, nah.
I'm going no.
Yeah. Unless you need it, like front traction as a practical tool for airs, full barrel. If that's what you're going out and doing, if you've never done an air in your life and or don't regularly kick airs, pump down the line with your front traction. But I have some at home. I have never affixed front traction. Maybe it's epic. Have you ever surfed front traction?
I've had it on a board that I borrowed last year in Australia. Company that builds the spine technology loaned me a couple of Channel Islands, and one of them had the front traction. And I liked it. It felt good. It was like a corduroy one.
Did you have to wax it on top of it?
I didn't. No.
So it totally stuck.
Wax it. It totally worked, and it was comfortable, but I didn't feel comfortable visually because once you have that on your board, everybody else goes, "Oh, that guy's
doing airs,
doing crazy airs," which I'm definitely not. So I just look like a kook.
Yeah.
But wax isn't broken. You know, like wax for me works.
I mean, I love the smell of wax still. I love waxing a board.
I'm happy with wax.
But now that I think about it, I'm going to give front traction a go.
But not a barrel yet?
Well, I really harshed it there without ever using it. I'm going to use it. So I'm going to say, I'm going to withdraw my no barrel. I don't like it visually on somebody who's not shredding, but maybe that's my own bad hang up, because maybe front traction is epic. Maybe everybody should have front traction. No,
stereotypes exist for a reason.
I love them, but I don't know that stereotype personally yet.
Okay.
I don't know that this one, I'm going to give it a go. I'm going to front traction up.
Now, a couple of other practical considerations.
Front traction on my mid-length.
Ooh, that's definitely a nod. So this is unique to high performance thrusters, but a couple considerations. If you're trunking it.
Yeah. Do you get shredded?
The one that I was using was the corduroy traction. So it was soft and I was trunking it. So it was like soft and it felt good on my chest. Whereas
the diamonds,
if you're used to wearing a wetsuit and then you go on a tropical surf trip, it takes you a few days to get used to that rashing on your stomach.
For sure.
Even when you're just using wax.
Of course. Even more so on wax.
And if you have chest hair, it gets in your chest hair. So the front traction would eliminate the wax in the chest hair. I don't know what it would do for the abrasion if it was the diamond dobbies as opposed to the Velcro or the corduroy.
I am going to test this out. I'm going to front traction up.
Okay.
I have some octopus front traction.
Okay.
Dion Aegis
is that the corduroy
signature
one?
I think it's a corduroy.
Yeah. I like that pad.
Yeah.
All right. So we're going to have to come back and revisit this one later then. Barrel or non number 3, UFOs.
I saw that Kelly Slater himself weighed in on the whole UFO thing.
What was his take?
Well, it was Joe Rogan had posted something about UFOs and Kelly.
That's why I'm bringing it up too.
I mean, Kelly just weighed in like about time there was some good news or something like that.
So Joe Rogan had on a couple of guests last week who made a documentary about whatever. And really what happened was the CIA, I guess, like released some documents that were previously top secret and basically validating, like, we have an entire budget set aside to study UFOs. Here's the various encounters. They released some videos.
I saw the videos.
Yeah, which by the way, the videos are hard for me to even make out.
Sure.
They're black and white, they're grainy, and there's like...
When you just see a light move real quick.
Yeah, but there's kind of multiple lights on the screen, so I don't know. It's like when I look at an x-ray for bones.
Sure.
I can see various what I think are fractures, but they go, no, this one's the fracture. And I go, well, what are those other lines?
Yeah.
You know? So anyways, the videos I can't make out, but apparently they're meaningful because the UFO moves in these ways that show zero propulsion, like from an internal propulsion source, whatever. Scientifically, they're undefinable. And so they're unidentified flying objects. Are they alien? We don't know, but they're unidentified flying objects. The fact that the CIA said, hey, these things that you guys have conspiracy theorizing about for these last 20 years, we are validating. Yes, we've also have no explanation for them. Then the New York Times wrote a whole article about it, basically validating these fringe characters. Bob Lazar is one of them. They made a documentary about him. I think it's on Hulu or Netflix. You should watch it. It's actually really good.
Okay.
He was on Rogan a year ago talking about all of this because he worked at Area 51 reverse engineering their alien craft that they had found in the 80s. They had alien craft. He was reverse engineering the technology.
He can talk about that? He didn't sign an NDA or whatever?
No, he came out in the late 80s, early 90s talking about it, and they basically slandered his character.
Okay.
Like they deleted all of his admission records from MIT. So journalists were looking into him as a person going, we can't even validate that you're a physicist.
Yeah.
So like there was all that,
That's
but now based on what the CIA released and what the New York Times reported on, it's all validated.
Okay.
So Lazar's going, yeah, I'm vindicated 20 and 30 years on.
Thanks.
But because
US
of
government.
COVID and because of Black Lives Matter, this isn't even a news story. Like the UFO thing, nobody's even talking about except Rogan.
It was weird to me when the whole UFO thing first came out, like where the government admitted, yes, we don't know what these are. These are, for all intents and purposes, these are unidentified flying objects. I mean, that's literally what they are. I thought, wow. But the fact that not that many people cared, I thought, oh, maybe this is...
Right.
Yeah. Did everybody just assume that, yeah, there's something out there and we don't know and whatever?
There's more questions than there are answers.
Sure.
So the reality is there's now answers that we didn't have before, but that only opens up more questions.
What did the vehicle or whatever look like? Did they talk about it?
Yeah. It
a
looks
disc?
like what we have all been seen from our childhood.
Okay, the flying disc.
It's a disc. It's a metal disc, and around the apex of that circumference is a light.
Okay.
Like a band of light, basically. So when people talk about like being blinded by the light from when the UFO landed, that's what this is. It's like this beam of floodlights that shock you so that you can't see what the thing actually is, really.
Okay.
And then they have some sort of alien encounter.
Fascinating.
Yeah. I'm barrel on this. I think it's insanely narcissistic, firstly, to think that we're the only, when you look at the size of the galaxy, galaxies and the universe, we are this speck of dust. That's Earth. And then we are individual speck of dust on this speck of dust. Like to think that we're the only life form that exists. Now, whether or not it's intelligent life form or any of that, who knows? But to think that we're the only life form that exists is kind of insane.
It's fun. I mean, I'm a barrel on it just purely for interest. I mean, it's an interesting wrinkle. It's
fascinating.
In your day.
Now, I don't know if you open up the world of paranormal, like does Bigfoot exist?
Yeah.
Do ghosts exist? Those are all separate conversations, which are also worth having because it's also interesting.
Loch Ness Monster.
But as far as UFOs specifically, based on these news stories, I'm going barrel. Let's investigate more.
Barrel too.
Okay.
I'm barrel. I think it's fun. I think it is people who really go down the hole, as it were, and become only interested in it. I think, oh, well, that seems maybe like a waste of time, but maybe even not.
I think the problem is for like actual journalists investigating these things, there's probably 90% of it is complete hogwash. And so you get exhausted before you get to the 10% that's actually verifiable fact. And so most legitimate journalists probably just get washed out of it.
Did he have any reason for why the government is admitting to this kind of stuff now? Like, it seems like all of a sudden they just said, okay, yeah, there's stuff out there that we don't know. We're not saying that it's like alien. We just don't know what it is.
I forget why they've opened that up.
I mean, is it just a freedom of information kind of thing, or
might have been like after a certain number of years, things get.
Yeah.
Also, I don't understand what they're trying to protect us from. Like, why are they keeping it secret in the first place?
Yeah. Fascinating.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Anyways.
Joe Rogan and Kelly back together.
Lots more to come. Yeah, I'm sure with UFOs. All right. Thanks to Album Surf. We forgot to thank them initially, but Album hosting us amidst quarantine and everything else.
Fantastic surf shop.
Yep.
Open during the day. Swing on by. Get yourself an ASIM. Get yourself a foam top.
Their boy Josh Kerr in the pool at Waco, really showing what practice can do. I mean, he's going, I'm trying different maneuvers on this section and then going into the barrel and then trying on this section. And he shows 8 clips of him doing different variations on the same thing.
And I assume follow camming Sierra, right? I mean, that follow cam angle, if it wasn't, whoever was surfing behind her, was it on a ski?
No.
Couldn't have been. Yeah. So he was follow camming epic. I mean, he should win an Oscar for cinematography.
We need to do a long discussion about that father-daughter dynamic and how they are going to take over the world and social media.
Yep.
In the age of vloggers and self-generating content, that is a story.
I mean, they've got it.
It's amazing. Yeah. So that's one of Album's team writers. So thanks to Album, beachgrit.com, surfsplendorpodcast.com. Find us on YouTube.
Like it. Oh, wait, we didn't pick a book recipient.
We'll do it via social media.
Great.
All right.
Okay.
Chaz.
Get barrel.